It's time for Bringing the Heat with Bryan Nolen.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It is another edition of Bringing the Heat with Bryan Nolen. Bryan Nolen here on this week's edition of the program. Mr. Anthony Damcott, my man, is going to be joining the program. We'll be recapping the wildness that we saw at Watkins Glen, previewing the playoff bubble, heading into Bristol, and so much more. But first, let's dive on into the Inferno, this time with the driver of the number 31 car, that being Mr. Daniel Hemric.
Now it's time for
closing the gap. Out of 4, they're side by side. Hemric's gonna win it at the line. Daniel Hemric just silenced the doubters. He's made his own history. Daniel Hemric wins. He's the Xfinity Series champion.
You got it.
To go into the Inferno with Bryan.
All right, right here, joined by the driver from Kaulig Racing, Daniel Hemric, joined the program. Daniel, obviously, been a little bit of a struggle of a season. Just describe your season, and then what's been the biggest struggle so far for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, some could say struggle of a season. I feel like, a lot of the days we've actually outpunted our raw speed. So, I mean, if you're going to compare it to the top organizations, then yeah, you could call it a struggle, but in the grand schemes, I think it's very important in life in general, not only racing, but to have a true understanding of what your identity is. And I think with Kaulig Racing success in the Xfinity Series, it's easy to say, oh yeah, they're in a Cup Series, they should be winning. In the grand scheme of things, we're 3 years into a Cup deal, and it's no secret that our alliance partners in RCR have struggled this year, and all that runs downhill. So yeah, we've been able to, maximize some of our days. I mean, heck, we ran, 9th at Dover. We had 9th 3 other times at Nashville and the other super speedways. So, yeah, I mean, obviously there's been some races where, I've made some mistakes, or we've just been caught up in some things that have for sure put us outside kind of our window of finishing that we think we're capable of, which is, within that, mid-20s to lower 20s. We started the year saying if we could run and get a finish anything with a 1 in front of it, that's a great day for us, without attrition. And then with attrition, you can better yourselves. And unfortunately, we have found ourselves as part of that attrition. That's kind of led to some of those other finishes. But no, in all reality, the biggest struggle, though, to answer the back side of that question, has been the short track side of things. Man, we have just really struggled massively with that short track package. Not a lack of effort. Trent Owens, crew chief Jonas, and myself, all of us collectively have continued to put our heads together and try to figure it out. We haven't hit on that side of it, and unfortunately, you see our races that are decent and strong are usually not with that package. So, we've for sure looked back at the season and wish we could hit on something on that side of things, but we just haven't. So, you come to your tracks where you have opportunities, you try to make the most of them.
I keep hearing from so many people there's such a big adjustment from the Xfinity to the Cup side. For you personally, what's been the biggest adjustment? Obviously, you've been in the Cup for a couple years now since the Xfinity days, but what's been the biggest adjustment for you?
I think even on your days you struggle, in the Xfinity Series side, especially being with, bigger powerhouse teams over the years, right? Your bad days where you're back there grinding it out, trying to figure out how to run, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, like on your really tough days. And this deal here, I mean, at any point, even I look back at Darlington last week, and you get 25 laps in a run, you look from the leader. That's not fair. You probably look from like 3rd place back to 30th, and literally everybody's running within a 10th and a half. That's what you don't have in the other series. So, yeah, I mean, everybody at this level is extremely good. And if you have any weak part of your game that particular weekend, it's going to show up, and it does show up. So, I think that's probably just not something everybody gets used to, or not even that I had to adjust to. It's something I knew from my experience in 2019, but I've enjoyed driving the cars and just trying to work on the racecraft and understanding it.
I think the last time I talked to you, you just had your second child, or you're just about to have your second child. Just what's that been like? How different has it been than the first one? And then just what are the similarities and the differences?
I think most parents would support me in saying this, that you have your first child, and obviously it's a big change of your pace of life and kind of how you go about things. And then but having one is having one. And then when you go and have two, I feel like it feels like you have 5 or 6 all of a sudden. Two definitely changes the game on how you got to allocate your time, and really, for me, it made me put a lot more emphasis on my structure of understanding how I flowed my weeks, how I balanced the personal life with the business side of things, and trying to make the time correct to give them the time they need to kind of be there. Still love to watch them grow and develop. And our little girl was our first child. She's now 4.5. Her name's Ren, and Rustin, our little guy, will be 2 in December. And they could not be further apart from their personalities and just how they just go about figuring things out in this life. But it's been fun nonetheless.
Now, we've seen drivers like Harrison Burton and Jeff Burton, Ryan Blaney, Dave Blaney, come from like families of racing. Now, your wife raced. Do you want to see your daughter or even your son go down the path that you and even your wife went down of racing full time?
God, I hope not. I say that, kidding, obviously, but no, in all reality, I mean, my wife and I are just trying to let our kids kind of go and enjoy life and experience all the things they want to experience. Our daughter, like I said, is 4.5, and she's to the point where she actually sees certain sports, and she says, hey, I'd like to try that. Currently, it's gymnastics and soccer is what she's into. I don't know what the next little phase will be, but they would have to come to us with a really heartfelt reason and, what's the right word? Kind of a blueprint of how they'd want to go about racing if they ever come to that. But when the time is right, she's almost there for me to start taking her on our golf course. That's what I'm pushing for. And I'll be pushing for the same thing for our little guy, and hopefully that sticks.
I was literally just about to ask if you had to decide between golf and racing. You're choosing golf?
Absolutely. 100%, yes.
Going back to your side of things, the racing side, when you come to the track each and every week, what is your goal? Is it to improve for the team? Is it to get top 5, top 10? What's the goal for you each and every single week?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's to, I walk through the gate, and when I know I'll walk out of the gate, that Sunday afternoon or Sunday night, I just want to be able to look back and think about my racecraft, think about, how aware I was within the moments, within the kind of the ever-changing parts of a cup race, the distance, how much goes into these events. Like, I want to be able to look back at those moments and just situationally, understand where I was at, that I feel like I performed my best, that I feel like, I could have changed anything to control our outcome. If I do those things, then the results are going to be what they're going to be. I think I'm not really hung up on the results, to be honest with you. There was a time in my life where I was. I got to go do this weekend. I just don't think that's accurate, and that goes back to your first question of struggles or not struggles, right? I think understanding your identity of where you're at and where your team's currently at, and I think staying within those parameters kind of helps me keep an inner peace within my life, both professionally and personally.
Now, obviously, there's been rumors aplenty about the charter agreement. Now, obviously, you're not an owner, but you are a driver. How much does that play into you when you're thinking just on a daily or a weekend basis about the charter deal? Is it going to get done? Is it not going to get done? What does next year hold if it doesn't get done? How much does that, I don't want to say consume you, but how much does that keep into your brain a little bit?
I mean, it definitely doesn't consume me by no means. I mean, obviously, you got owners like Matt Colleague and the Petties and the Denny's and Jordans and all those guys, right? Hemric, all those guys that have invested so much into the sport. Those are the guys I feel like, and their personal individuals they have hired to kind of help navigate those processes, right? They're the ones that I'm sure it consumes currently. But for me, right, I mean, it definitely affects probably your negotiation side of things, like, depending on what the charter agreement states and percentages teams get and so on and so forth, right? I feel like that's probably one of the bigger holdups. As that number changes, it changes kind of who has what leverage and which, you take those negotiation side of things. So, but I mean, in the end of the day, like I said, I mean, you drive race cars for a living. You that's what you want to do. I feel confident at some point that they'll reach a spot where they can all agree on. I think it's going to take everybody giving a little bit. Not everybody's going to be 100% happy, but I think finding the happiest place should be sooner or later, I think. But it is pretty interesting to kind of read as the whole process goes through what it's going through over the last couple months.
I feel like both parties are not going to be happy, and that's when a deal is going to get made, when both parties are not completely satisfied, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, I've listened and read a lot of Denny's personal comments regarding the topic, and I've listened, talked to, and read a lot of stuff on the NASCAR side of things, and all you hear really, right, because I'm not in those meetings, is secondhand, but in the grand scheme of things, I think they're all trying to come from the right place, and in the day, everyone just wants to feel like they're getting a fair shake of this huge pie that we're all trying to get our piece of.
Last but not least, I got to ask about 2025. What does the future hold for you? Are you going to be back with Cog Racing? Just where do we see Daniel Hemric in 2025? Yeah,
it's a great question. I really up in the air at this point. I don't really know. Obviously with a sport that's ever changing and what it takes, right? I mean, I'm just trying to show up and do my job, and I think it'll work out the way it's supposed to. I don't know if that's going to be here at Colleague Racing or not. I think that's kind of more of a Chris Rice, Matt Colleague question. But I'll stay committed to the fact that when I came to drive here, the goal was to be here for a long time and find a long-term home. And just curious to see how it all shakes out myself.
Daniel Hemric joins the program.
Once again, that was the driver of the number 31 car, Mr. Daniel Hemric. Let's dive on into our news and note segment with what is still hot.
What's still hot? It's time to upgrade you on the latest news in NASCAR.
Going to bring in, at this time, he is one of our fantastic rising stars. Screw it. He is a superstar in the making, Mr. Anthony Damcott, at Anthony Damcott, showing off those big guns here on the StreamYard stream that we do. What's going on, AD? How are you, buddy?
Man, such kind words from you, Mr. Nolen. I'm doing fantastic. Getting ready to close out the season. Got to finish out the season strong. So it starts here at Bristol.
It's crazy. We've got 7 races left till the season is over. It is wild, and then we get a much needed break for a couple months. But another guy that is pretty darn happy, that being Bubba Wallace. He signed a multi-year contract extension that will remain as the driver of the number 23 car with 2311 for at least till the end of 2026. I think this signifies something a little bit more than normal, Anthony, because I think it was at Atlanta, Bubba said he hadn't signed his contract because of the charter agreement. Now he signed his contract. Could that mean the charter deal is getting closer with 2311 in NASCAR?
I think so. And I think there was a quick realization. I would imagine, I'm not in the, I'm not a fly on the wall in those meetings, but, I would imagine that 2311 didn't have a lot of leverage once all the teams signed the charter agreement. And props to them for holding out to get what they think they deserve. But I think there was kind of I feel like there might have been a something nagging them saying this isn't going to work out the way we want it to. And I think it was probably better for them to lock down Bubba long term, instead of waiting for NASCAR to, maybe hear them out or something. And then who knows, maybe another team comes in and steals him, and then all of a sudden they're scrambling to find a new driver for the 23. So I think, it was just, plus we're getting to the end of the season. I think, I feel like Bubba would want to go into the offseason knowing that he has ride security, that he can just go out and try to win races. So I think there were a combination of factors, but obviously, saying that he wasn't signing a contract until the charter agreement was handled and now signing tells me that they might have, they either gave up on what they thought would be right, or they were just like, we got to get Bubba now, which either way I think is the right move, signing Bubba now instead of waiting it out.
Yeah, I think we're just reading a little bit too much into this. I think they're going to go kicking and screaming to get what they want in the charter deal. So I think they just wanted to get all the dot the T's and cross the T's and dot the I's as the saying goes. So good stuff for Bubba. He's going to be remaining with 2311 for the next couple of years. What we're not going to be seeing though is 4 drivers, as they are going to be eliminated following the race in Bristol coming up on Saturday night. Yes, it is a cutoff race for the round of 12. Mr. Anthony Damcott, Denny Hamlin, Brad Keselowski, Martin Truex Jr., Harrison Burton, all below the cut line. If you had to pick one driver not named Harrison Burton that could potentially stay below the round of 12, who are you picking and why?
I gotta go with Martin Truex Jr. And it's a tough pick because aside from Harrison Burton, all 3 of the drivers that are below the cut line ran really well at Bristol in the spring, and they've traditionally run really well at Bristol. I expect all 3 of them to be contenders. But I mean, there's just I don't know if there's something amiss on the 19 team right now. I don't know if it's just Martin Truex Jr. checked out on the year. I mean, he seemed pretty checked out at Watkins Glen based on the interviews that we saw. But I don't see a path where the 19 is able to advance just because, like I said, I expect Denny Hamlin to be phenomenal there. Brad Keselowski, more than capable of not winning, more than capable of pointing his way in. Martin Truex Jr., he could win, he could point his way in, and I would not be surprised in the slightest, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he was, of those 3, the odd one out in that scenario, just because, this has not been a season that the 19 team that we're accustomed to seeing the 19 team having. And I think, it would probably be, I don't want to say fitting, but it would probably be expected if the championship run in Martin Truex's final year ends after the first round.
Let's dive on into the soundbite of the week, where we hear from SVG after he came up 1 spot short after a fantastic last lap battle with Mr. Christopher Buescher.
Well, Tony, what angered you at the end of the race? What did you take issue with?
What the hell do you think I was mad about? Dumb little runs us clear down to the infield. He wants to about everybody else, and he's the one that drives like a little. I'm going to bust his ass.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
And short track racing.
It's time for the Soundbites of the week.
Qualifying starting up the pole, the team just showing in the 5th spot, Ross. Again, we talked about the chaos and several restarts here late, but
Shane, walk me through that final lap.
Yeah, just made an error.
What happened?
Hit the wall.
So we're expecting Buescher to get into you coming out of the
I just knew I had to go to my maximum, right? And then, it just got a little loose and it put me a bit too shallow, and I just mucked up.
So what were you trying to do in that final 2 turns where it looked like you lost it?
Okay, I was just going as fast as I could. Yeah.
So what'd you think of the race overall?
That was great. Weather check tomorrow was really good. Good battles with Ross, with Chris, with everyone. It was an awesome race. Yeah, just we kind of got off place with strategy, but it's what it is.
Once again, that was Mr. Shane Van Gisbergen. Anthony, I mean, my goodness. Going into that final battle when he beat Chris Buescher, and then going into the bus stop, I thought this is SVG's win. And then Buescher got him in the bus stop, and I was shocked. How surprised were you that Buescher not only got to him, passed him, but was also surprised that he held him off?
I think I'm more shocked that SVG blew the bus stop. I think if he goes through the bus stop cleanly, I think, it's going to take nothing short of Chris Buescher just running through the 16 to win the race. And so to see Shane Van Gisbergen, and we've talked about how good he is on the road courses, and he's a master, obviously. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been up front on the final lap. But, I mean, it was surprising to see because I expected. I mean, Chris Buescher said it himself. He expected to not make. He didn't expect to make his move right where he did. He expected it to be a little, in the carousel, coming out of the carousel. And he had 2 bump and run opportunities in the final 2 corners, but it was not the finish I was expecting. The running joke has been that SVG is human. We've seen the human side. He is vulnerable at road courses, which I think we've seen before. I mean, he's not perfect. Nobody is, but it was a great race, and I expected it to be some sort of beaten, banging, knockdown, drag out run to the line. But I mean, I'm sure SVG is still kicking himself for that, and you can tell in that soundbite too, because I mean, SVG is a very he's generally a media friendly person, and he was not really he was pretty short when he was talking with our own Daniel McFadden. So you can tell that one kind of he wishes he had that one back, and understandably so.
Yeah, it was. I also felt that he was a little short, but I mean, in his defense, I wouldn't want to talk to us when I lost a race by hitting a barrier when I knew that I could win the race as well. So I see both sides of it, but man, that was a struggle for SVG to try and get over that loss. I know he's going to be kicking himself for that one. Let's dive on into some final thoughts where we wrap it up.
It's going to be a drag race all the way back to the start-finish line. No caution. They're side by side, right to the line. Big crash. Here they come. Checkered flag.
The checkered flag is out, and it's time for the final thoughts.
All right, our final thought segment is in the air. Mr. Anthony Damcott, whatever you want to rant, rave, or anything in between, brother. Right now, the floor is yours.
Listen, I was pretty surprised to hear that Nick Sanchez would be replacing Parker Kligerman at Big Machine Racing, and I'm very happy for him. He is, you can't say he hasn't earned it, because he has done his part in the Truck Series, and he has made it very far, and he is a talented driver, and he has a lot of great potential. And to reunite with Big Machine, because a lot of people forget that when Big Machine had ditched Jay Buford and started hosting a rotation of drivers before deciding on Parker Kligerman, Nick Sanchez was one of those drivers that made some starts, and I think he's more than earned it. He's won a couple races in the Truck Series. He has the ability to remain competitive. I'm excited to see what he does. But that leaves a spot open in the Truck Series, and me, Mr. Nolen, I like to plug the Truck Series whenever I can, as Front Stretch's resident Truck Series guy. We have a lot of open seats now in the Truck Series, and not a single one has been announced yet. We have Christian Eckes' seat, Daniel Dye's seat, and now Nick Sanchez's seat, and who knows who else is going to be leaving the Truck Series. So it'll be an interesting, silly season for the Truck Series. I could give some educated guesses on who I think would fill the rides, but I mean, this might be one of the wilder Truck Series silly seasons in quite some time.
I mean, I'm sad to let you know this, but Corey Heim may win 18 races next year, Anthony.
Oh, I at this point, I kind of expect it. I would love to see him just sweep the season. That would be fantastic.
I mean, it could be very, very ugly, but hey.
I mean, what does he have to do to get promoted at this point?
I don't know, but I would highly recommend the Fire on Fridays article that Michael Massey wrote about him and him not going to JGR because of bad blood from ARCA back in 2021. I mean, 3 years ago.
Yes.
Like what? So highly recommend that.
Very good read. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. For me, 684. That is the number starts Martin Truex Jr. has in his NASCAR Cup Series career, and or I should say 685. That all could come to an end this weekend for him chasing a championship. He is on the outside looking in. And for Martin, obviously not the final season that he has won. Out of 28 races, only 9 top 10s, 4 top 5s, and only 493 laps led. Sure, he's had a good season statistic-wise, but there's one little goose egg. That is the number 0 in wins. He had 8 wins in 2017, 7 wins in 2019, but a goose egg in 2024. What is it about guys in their final season that just go out winless? Kevin Harvick, Jimmy Johnson, they all win out winless. Obviously, Jeff Gordon in his final full-time season did not do that, but even Dale Earnhardt Jr. went winless in his final full-time season. Will that happen to Martin Truex? I, for one, hope not. Now, obviously, as media, we don't cheer for drivers. We cheer for good storylines. I think as a good storyline, it would be awesome to see Martin Truex Jr. have one final race as a winner. Will that happen this weekend? Time will tell. But for him to advance, he's going to have a good run and easily would advance with one of those checkered flags at the end of the night. Mr. Anthony Damcott, you mentioned the NASCAR Truck Series. They're back in action this weekend, or should I say tomorrow? Actually, today, when this comes out, later this evening on FS1, they're going to be taming Thunder Valley in Bristol. What are you going to be cooking up on frontstretch.com? And then plug your socials, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, the Truck Series hits the half mile, the last great Coliseum tonight. At 8 p.m. on Fox Sports 1. Keep a lookout for Tracking the Trucks, either following the race or Friday morning, depending on how our editors feel. I will where I break down the action that we saw in the truck race, talk a little bit about the storylines that came from the race, preview the next race, which I believe is at Kansas, where that is a round of 10 cutoff. For the Truck Series to see who will not be continuing on for a championship fight. And then I'll also have Fire on Fridays, where I will be going off the NASCAR path just a little bit. I will be talking about the world's best driver debate. Of course, we've talked about Kyle Larson versus Max Verstappen. We need to give Alex Blow a little bit of credit. He just won his third IndyCar championship in his fifth full-time season. I'm a little bit surprised he hasn't been mentioned in the world's best driver conversation. So I'm going to mention him on Fire on Fridays, coming out Friday morning. And then, of course, you can follow me on X at Anthony Damcott for all the greatest racing hot takes, to wallow in self-pity about the Carolina Panthers and the Cincinnati Reds, for that matter. Yeah, and tweet a lot about college football, because that does a lot. That makes my mental health a lot better than the Carolina Panthers. So.
I'm thinking, is there a worse college football fan than you? I mean, you got Temple, who's terrible. You got Carolina, who's like historically bad. Like God bless you, brother.
I choose team. I don't know why. I've decided to root for teams that just live at the bottom of the totem pole. I mean, like you mentioned, Carolina Panthers, the Cincinnati Reds in baseball. Temple, Akron. I do root for the LSU Tigers. I root for the LSU Tigers in all sports. So, I have something going for me at least. But, yes, I don't know why. I don't know why I did this to myself when I was 7 or 8 years old and said, yep, those are the teams I want to root for.
I became a fan of the Jets because of Brett Favre. And, when he left, I could have went to the Vikings or went back to the Packers, but I stayed a Jets fan. I could have had a Super Bowl win with the Packers, but here I am, being a degenerate, not the degenerate that Trey is at. But that's okay. Shout out Trey, love you. No, don't stop it. But enough about Trey. At least he's not a White Sox fan. I will say that. But enough about all of this other sports stuff. Check out our NASCAR stuff on frontstretch.com. Coming up next on the Front Stretch Podcast Network, Through the Gears, my man Tino's got all the latest betting odds for the final race in the round of 16. Once again, Through the Gears. And then you got Stock Car Scoop as well as Happy Hour for Mr. Anthony Damcott, Trey Lau, and everybody associated with Front Stretch Podcast. I am Bryan Nolen. Thank you so much. We'll talk with you next week.
What's up? Michael Massey here, frontstretch.com. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button.